Why do we so often lose our composure over trivial things? A car cutting in front of us, a careless remark, an email from the boss at 10 p.m. Any of these can throw our minds into disarray. In today's world, emotions easily take over our actions, and if we don't train our minds, they will rule us. The video, Train Your Mind to Stay Calm in Any Situation, begins with a stark reminder. If you don't control your mind, it will control you. Stoicism doesn't promise a life without hardship, but it offers something more valuable, the ability to choose your response. And calmness, which once felt distant, is in fact a skill, one that can be developed. In this video, we'll explore principles that help you stay composed amidst chaos, turning that composure into a foundation for strength, clarity, and inner freedom. Let's begin with a story grounded in real life. 1. Separate emotion from action. Emotions come fast. They rise within us like a sudden wave. Anger when insulted, fear in the face of failure, envy at someone else's success. But action, that is chosen. And if you fail to distinguish the two, you will live like a puppet, pulled by whatever tugs on your emotional strings. Stoicism reminds us, emotion is part of being human, but letting it lead is a mistake. A wise person recognizes their anger, their pain, but remains lucid enough not to act from that pain. Imagine walking out of a meeting where a colleague publicly criticized you in front of your boss. Your heart races, your face heats up, your throat goes dry, physical signs of rising emotion. The instinct is to strike back with sharp words or storm off in frustration. But if you pause for just 3 seconds, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, where is this emotion trying to take me? You open a space between stimulus and response, where true freedom begins. Epictetus once said, "It's not the events themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." The Stoic does not try to suppress emotion. They simply do not let it decide their actions. Separating emotion from action doesn't mean repressing it. It means observing it. You observe as if from the outside, as though you are not the angry person, but the person witnessing an anger forming. Creating that distance, even if just for a few seconds, marks the difference between one who acts on emotion and one who acts with reason. In practice, that space could be stepping out of the room, jotting a few lines in a journal, or simply inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 7, and exhaling for 8. The 4-7-8 technique many modern Stoics use to restore mental balance. Some ask, if I don't react immediately, doesn't that mean I'm weak? But in truth, strength lies not in who can shout the loudest, but in who has the control not to shout at all when provoked. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if others act poorly, that's their choice. My response is mine. The angry, the reactive, the easily offended, these are the ones ruled by emotion. The Stoic trains to keep that authority for themselves. In a world that constantly tries to trigger your emotions through sensational news, toxic comments online, or workplace drama, the ability to separate emotion from action becomes a kind of superpower. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you purposeful. You no longer react by instinct, but respond by choice. That's when you stay silent in a needless argument, smile at a false accusation, or simply walk away instead of hurting someone just because you're hurting. Practicing this isn't easy. There will be moments when you fail, when you say what you shouldn't, when you act in ways you regret. But every time you pause before acting from a strong emotion, you're training your mind. Like muscle, calm grows stronger with each choice not to react. And slowly, you'll discover something profound. Emotions come and go, but you remain the observer, the chooser, the free one. The Stoic is not emotionless. They simply refuse to let emotion govern their destiny. In today's world, where people are more easily triggered than ever, this self-mastery is not just a personal strength. It's a gift you give yourself and those around you. To act from reason, not emotion, that is the foundation of a life without regret. And it always begins with a small moment. The moment you pause, acknowledge your feeling and ask yourself, will acting from this place take me where I want to go? If not, wait. Action after thought is the act of a free person. 2. Stand firm when provoked. Not everyone will treat you kindly. There will be times you are mocked, insulted, misunderstood, or harshly attacked simply because you chose a different path. In those moments, the urge to react is natural. Your ego is touched, your pride is wounded, and your mind screams for retaliation, a sharp comeback, a scathing glare, an argument to set things straight. But right then, you stand at a crossroads. You can react like they did and become part of the rage, or you can stand firm, refusing to be dragged into the chaos. Stoicism teaches that the one who reacts instantly to insult is the weak one. Not weak in body, but in self-control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can control your actions, not the actions of others." When you retaliate to a provocation, you're declaring that someone else's emotions now govern yours. When you argue with someone who has lost their temper, you step into the emotional trap they've set. The Stoic doesn't do that. They observe, they feel, but they do not react from weakness. They hold their ground because they understand. Calmness is a refusal to surrender control of the self to anyone else. In practice, standing firm when provoked is not about passive endurance, nor is it avoidance. It is an active choice, the choice not to let others pull you away from your balance. A backhanded comment, a dismissive glance, a negative post online. These are just noise. And if you let yourself respond to every piece of noise, you'll spend your life fighting endless battles. The Stoic does not tie their self-worth to recognition or judgment from others. They build a stronghold within, where honor comes from doing what is right, not from applause or attack. Picture yourself walking down the street and a stranger shouts profanities at you. You have two options. You can stop, react, and make yourself a participant in their impulse. Or you can keep walking, knowing their behavior says nothing about you, only about them. Not reacting isn't weakness, it's strength. The strength not to be led by provocation. Like a soldier on the battlefield, the most formidable is not the one who yells, but the one who stands steady, calm with hands unwavering on his weapon. In the workplace, in family, in society, those who shout, mock, or belittle may seem powerful. But the moment they fail to provoke you, they lose that power, and you, the one who remains silent, composed, self-possessed, become the one who truly commands the situation. Holding firm under provocation must be practiced daily. You won't always succeed. There will be slips, words you wish you hadn't said, anger you wish you had restrained. But each time you choose silence, step back at the right time, or hold your tongue instead of teaching them a lesson, you lay another brick in your inner fortress. It is a long process, but it is worth it. You don't need to win every argument. In truth, you don't need to be in them. Truth doesn't need shouting. Value doesn't need defending through quarreling. The one with strength is the one who knows when to speak, and when silence is the most powerful response of all. Standing firm under provocation is a way of living. It is a quiet declaration. I command my own mind, and I will not let anyone lead me away from myself. It is the humility of one who needs no validation, and the confidence of one who knows exactly who they are. In a world constantly trying to press on your wounds, strength is when you choose not to react, not because you didn't feel it, but because you saw it clearly and chose not to let it touch your soul. 3. Accepting injustice. There will be times in life when you do everything right, act with integrity, work hard, do no wrong, and still the outcome is not what you hoped. Someone else gets promoted instead of you, even though you put in more effort. A dishonest person is rewarded while you are overlooked. A relationship ends through no fault of your own, yet you're the one left hurt, and you ask, why me? As though justice is something promised by the universe. But Stoicism reminds us, injustice is a part of life, not an exception. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is natural, it cannot be wrong. If it happens to you, then nature has permitted it." This does not mean you must approve of injustice or become indifferent to pain. It means you don't surrender to negative emotions simply because things didn't go your way. Life is under no obligation to be fair. The world is not structured to meet anyone's expectations, and once you let go of the illusion that it should be fair, you begin to reclaim your strength. Accepting injustice is not resignation. It is a return to focus on the only thing you can control, your response. You can rage, resent, and wallow, or you can observe, understand, and continue to act with your values intact. The more energy you spend resenting unfairness, the more you waste on something outside your control. But when you return to yourself, when you continue to act with kindness, live with integrity, you affirm that your worth is not shaped by circumstances, but by your choices. Remember Martha's story, passed over for a promotion for reasons unrelated to merit, simply because the chosen one was a relative of the boss. She could have lashed out, quit, or lived in bitterness. Instead, she accepted the reality without judgment and kept doing her job well. Not long after, a better position opened, and this time, no one could deny her competence. It wasn't luck. It was the outcome of not letting injustice turn her into a lesser version of herself. The Stoic understands, events are just events. They become injustice only when the mind assigns them that label. Epictetus made it plain. It's not the things themselves that hurt us, but our thoughts about them. Change your perspective, and you change the power that event has over you. Injustice cannot touch you unless you allow it. And strangely, once you stop resisting it, you become stronger. Not because you defeated it, but because it no longer controls you. Accepting injustice does not make you weak. It makes you clear-eyed. It helps you see that life need not be fair for you to live fully. And it is precisely within injustice that you get to reveal your true character, your steadfastness, your humility, your clarity. You can be the person who never rages at life's unfairness. Not because you are numb, but because you've learned to live above expectations. peace does not come from a world that is well arranged, but from an inner world that has learned to calmly and deliberately accept what is not. And when you walk through injustice and still carry your virtue, you're not just living the Stoic path, you're living true to yourself. 4. You don't owe an explanation to those who don't deserve it. There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work, nor from failure, but from having to constantly explain yourself to those who never cared to understand. You choose a simple life. They say you lack ambition. You turn down parties. They call you arrogant. You pursue something different. They label you strange. And you find yourself trapped in a cycle. Every time you live authentically, you end up wasting time justifying, defending, and explaining your choices. But Stoicism reminds us, you owe no one an explanation, especially not those who don't care for the truth, only to judge. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you're doing the right thing, don't bother with what others think." This isn't a call for arrogance. It's a reminder that when you live by inner values, you don't need the crowd's approval to legitimize your existence. The need to explain yourself constantly often stems from a fear of being misunderstood or rejected. But the Stoic understands. No one is obligated to understand you, and you are not responsible for making everyone agree with your path. The truth is, those who truly care about you won't require endless words. They listen, observe, and understand with respect. On the other hand, those who constantly doubt, criticize, or scrutinize your choices aren't doing it to understand you. They're viewing you through the lens of their own bias. The more you try to explain to such people, the more you're pulled into a game you can never win, the game of control and judgment. The more you speak, the more they have to dissect. The more you justify, the more insecure you appear. Silence, in this case, is not avoidance. It's a firm declaration. I don't need your approval to live true to myself. The silence of someone who knows who they are holds a distinct kind of strength, quiet but impossible to ignore. In a world where everyone talks endlessly to be accepted, self-possessed silence leaves the deepest impression. Stoicism doesn't teach detachment or apathy. It teaches focus on what you can control, your behavior and your values. You can't control the thoughts, emotions, or opinions of others, but you can choose to live with integrity, to act with kindness, and not to be swayed by the crowd's expectations. When you do what's right and still face criticism, remember, not everyone has the depth to recognize goodness, and not everyone has the generosity to accept difference. Not explaining yourself to the undeserving doesn't mean closing off or isolating. It's how you preserve your mental energy from being wasted on meaningless dialogue. Instead of proving your worth with words, let time and action speak. A life lived with clarity and consistency radiates its own truth. And in the end, that consistency is what makes the sincere stay and the judgmental walk away. Because in the end, you're not here to please others. You're here to keep a promise to yourself. And that promise doesn't need anyone's approval to be valid. As long as you know where you're going, you don't need to explain why you've chosen the path. 5. Take responsibility for your emotions. The truth is, no one can hurt you unless you allow it. No one can make you angry unless you consent. The phrase, "he/she drove me crazy," might seem valid in daily life, but under Stoic light, It's a distortion of responsibility. Epictetus once said, "It's not the thing itself that makes you angry, but your opinion of it." This isn't just a philosophical observation. It's the key to living a truly free life. It starts with taking full responsibility for your emotions. In reality, blaming others for our negative emotions is common. Someone says something harsh. You feel offended. A lover walks away. You feel unworthy. A colleague succeeds. You feel jealous. And so you believe your feelings were caused by others. But the Stoic doesn't live that way. They understand emotions are internal responses to events. And because the inner life is yours, no one else can be held responsible for it. Taking responsibility for your emotions doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel sadness, anger, or disappointment. It simply means that if those emotions arise, you recognize them as yours, created by you and changeable by you. You are no longer a victim of circumstances. You become the designer of how you experience life. Instead of thinking, "That person made me sad," you ask, "Why did I let their words affect me so deeply?" That question opens space for self-understanding, healing, and growth. Shifting from reaction to responsibility is a difficult journey. It demands you give up the role of victim, a place where you find comfort, sympathy, and a reason not to change. But when you rise and say, "This emotion is mine, and I'll take responsibility for it," you take a major step toward inner freedom. No one can manipulate you if you don't let them govern your feelings. No situation can drown you if you don't allow it to define your state of mind. In life, there will be moments of deep injustice and pain, but the truth remains. How you choose to respond to those moments determines whether you suffer. You can be insulted and feel no pain. You can fail and not feel inferior. You can be left and not feel abandoned. This becomes possible when you build the habit of fully owning your emotions rather than letting them be dictated by others' actions. Stoicism doesn't promise a life free of negative emotion. It only promises that if you take responsibility for your emotions, they will no longer control you. And in a chaotic world, that is true power. When others rage, you remain calm. When insulted, you keep your grace. When the world is in turmoil, you keep your center. Not because you're numb, but because you've learned to master yourself from the inside out. And the most powerful part, that strength isn't granted by anyone. It comes from within. From the moment you stop blaming, from the moment you say, "This feeling is mine and I choose my response." That's where true freedom begins. 6. Silence is a weapon. We live in an age where everyone has a voice and often uses it too much. Social media rewards instant reaction, and modern life celebrates constant self-expression. In that noise, silence is often misunderstood as weakness, avoidance, or lack of courage. But to the Stoic, silence is not just restraint. It is a form of wisdom, self-control, and at times, the most powerful weapon for protecting your inner peace and personal power. Marcus Aurelius practiced silence as a discipline of clarity. He understood that once spoken, words cannot be taken back. Every sentence, every quick reaction can be twisted, misunderstood, or cause harm to others and to oneself. Stoics do not fear speech, but they always ask, "Is what I'm about to say necessary, kind, and timely?" If not, they choose silence. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand not everything known must be spoken, and not every conversation requires their presence. Silence is a quiet form of strength. When someone insults you and you don't respond, your silence can unsettle them more than any comeback. When others shout, accuse, or manipulate, and you remain calm, silent, unshaken, you make their loss of control stand out even more. You don't need to stoop low to teach them a lesson, because your silence already has. I will not be pulled into this fight. I remain in my freedom. One reason silence is so powerful is that it creates space. Space to think before acting. Space for emotions to settle. Space for others to realize what's truly happening. In a world of instinctive reactions, the one who pauses, even briefly, brings depth where there was only noise. Silence, like a rest in music, is not emptiness. It's the pause that gives rhythm its meaning. Of course, silence isn't always the answer. There are moments when you must speak to defend truth, stand for justice, or prevent harm. But even then, the words of one who is usually silent carry more weight. They don't speak to be heard. They speak because it is right. And because they speak rarely, people listen. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be mute before life. It teaches you to speak with purpose, responsibility, and only when needed. The rest of the time, let silence do its work. Preserve peace, protect energy, and display self-mastery. When you stay silent under attack, you deny others the power to stir your emotions. When you stay silent in petty arguments, you preserve your intellect instead of chasing temporary victory. And when you are silent in reflection, you listen to yourself, a skill not many have. Ultimately, silence is not passive. It's intentional. It's how the Stoic holds dignity in chaos, clarity amid noise. And in a world trying to provoke you into constant reaction, the one who knows when to be silent holds the deepest freedom. Freedom from agitation, hostility, and the prideful ego in each of us. 7. Live in a way that commands respect, not demands it. Respect cannot be forced. You can make others obey, even fear you, but you cannot compel someone to truly respect you. In today's world, many crave respect, yet seek it in the wrong ways, through coercion, boasting, one-upmanship, trying to prove themselves through flashy words or controlling behavior. They demand respect as if it's owed, forgetting that true respect never comes from asking, but from how you live each day. The Stoic does not seek external validation. They need no applause to confirm their worth. They understand that respect doesn't stem from status, fame, or eloquence, but from character expressed consistently through action, integrity, discipline, humility. These are the foundations that make others admire you without a word. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor of his time, did not seek to make others bow. He lived simply, led by example, and guarded against arrogance, even though his power could shake an empire. That is true respect, not from the throne, but from the life he lived. When you try to force respect, you live in fear that you are not enough. You live for recognition and thus become a hostage to others' opinions. Praise lifts you, criticism crushes you. The Stoic lives the opposite. They build value from within. They don't live to impress, but to stay true to conscience and principle. And that steadiness gives weight to their presence. Such people enter a room and are heard without speaking. They don't need to introduce themselves, because their presence does. To live in a way that earns respect doesn't mean being perfect or pleasing everyone. It means keeping your word, even when no one is watching. It means not betraying your values, even when great reward is at stake. It means treating those below you with kindness. Not because they can give you something, but because kindness needs no reason. These small acts, repeated long enough, become character. And character, once formed, is the deepest source of respect, untouchable by anyone. True respect makes no noise. It doesn't come from declaring yourself virtuous, successful, or profound. It comes from living in harmony between what you believe and what you do. When others see you treat people fairly, stay calm in anger, and refrain from tearing others down, they respect you, even if you never ask for it. Because respect, like light, doesn't need to be flaunted, only present. And if someone doesn't respect you, even though you've lived rightly, let them go. Respect is not owed. You are not obliged to be liked by all. Your only obligation is to live with kindness, discipline, and integrity. The rest, that's theirs to decide, and those with depth will see it. Stoicism doesn't teach you to seek the spotlight. It teaches you to live like a flame, not boastful, not needing proof, but always warm, always steady, and always strong. A person like that will, sooner or later, be respected, not because they demanded it, but because they earned it. 8. Choose carefully who you share. Emotions with. Not everyone deserves access to your most vulnerable parts. There are wounds, worries, and quiet thoughts that should be entrusted only to those who are understanding, trustworthy, and kind enough not to weaponize them against you. In a time when sharing is encouraged constantly, on social media, in daily conversations, it's easy to mistake openness for strength. But to a Stoic, indiscriminate openness is a lack of self-mastery, because you're giving emotional power to people who may never value it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Guard your inner life like a fortress." He didn't mean to isolate or shut down, but to highlight the need to protect the mind from harmful intrusions. You may share something with one person and feel healed, but with another, that same sharing becomes gossip, judgment, or later, a weapon aimed at you when you're most fragile. Emotions are sacred. When given to the wrong hands, they don't just get misunderstood, they deepen the wound. Choosing whom to share with doesn't mean you're not allowed to be vulnerable. It means knowing who is worthy of witnessing that vulnerability. A true friend doesn't need to fix you, they just need to be present and listen kindly. But someone emotionally unsafe, immature, or judgmental will leave you regretting your openness. When that happens, you're hurt twice, and you learn a hard but valuable lesson about caution. Some people share their feelings hoping for empathy, but if you place trust in the wrong person, what comes back may be mockery or control. That's why Stoics practice self-awareness, inner independence, and self-dialogue before turning to anyone else. They don't turn others into emotional lifeboats. They see trusted companions as fellow travelers, not people responsible for carrying their burdens. This discernment doesn't mean distrusting everyone. On the contrary, it helps you see who truly belongs in your life and who should be kept at a safe distance. When you're clear about what a healthy relationship looks like, you realize the quality of your bonds isn't measured by how many people you can vent to, but by the safety you feel around someone, even in silence. Stoicism teaches you to stand on your own 2 feet, but also not to reject genuine connection. That connection, however, must be built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. If not, It's better to hold your story inside and let time and silence cleanse it. A mature mind doesn't need no one. It simply knows who to invite into its inner world. Because in the end, emotions are a real part of who you are. Entrust them to those who are worthy. Don't let careless sharing make you a stranger in your own story. Let your heart stay soft, but your mind stay clear. That's how a Stoic preserves wholeness from within. 9. Don't argue with the uncontrolled. Let them burn out alone. When someone lashes out, angry, loud, chaotic, our first instinct is to defend. We feel attacked, feel the need to argue back, to prove our point, to clarify right from wrong. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. In any argument, especially with someone who has lost control, victory comes not from winning the debate, but from refusing to engage. Calmness in such moments is not surrender. It is the deepest display of wisdom and strength. Epictetus once said, "If someone insults you, remember it reflects on them, not on you." A person who has lost control doesn't care about truth. They don't seek reason or explanation. What they want is a release, validation of emotion, someone to throw their inner chaos at. If you dive into the argument, you lose your calm and stoop to their level. Worst of all, afterward, you carry the regret of having lost yourself just to win a fight that wasn't worth it. A Stoic chooses silence not because they have nothing to say, but because they know not everything needs to be said. They understand truth can stand without shouting, and they know when you walk away from a meaningless dispute, the other person must face the emptiness of their own behavior. That's not running away. It's handing them a mirror. Outbursts don't last without an audience, and you, by refusing to be that audience, end the noise in the most complete way. One of the highest forms of strength is knowing you could respond, but choosing not to. You hold a calm gaze, speak gently, or simply leave without any harsh words. In that moment, you preserve your dignity and quietly remind the other. Emotional outbursts cannot shake a mind that's been trained. Stoicism doesn't ask you to avoid all conflict. It teaches you to choose your battles. Not every confrontation deserves your presence, and no one is worth surrendering your inner peace for, not even for a shouting match. When you let someone thrash in anger without joining them, they're left with no one to fight but themselves. And that's when their true nature reveals itself, destroying their image without you ever saying a word. Remember, wisdom is not in what you say, but in what you choose not to say, when saying it serves no good. The angry person will get over their rage, but they'll remember the one who didn't fall into it with them. That's how you protect your mind, preserve your character, and keep your values untarnished by fleeting temper. In the end, when faced with a furious person, ask yourself, what am I trying to win here? If I lose my composure, is this even a victory? If the answer is no, then smile, step back, and let them battle themselves. You don't need to fight to prove your strength, because composure in the face of provocation is the clearest proof of all. 10. Calmness is wisdom in action. In a world driven by speed, reflex, and emotional outbursts, those who remain calm are often misunderstood as slow, passive, or indecisive. But the Stoic sees it differently. To them, calmness is not a vague state or a sign of weakness. It is the clearest expression of wisdom in motion. Only when the mind is still can you see the whole picture, and only when you see the whole picture can you make decisions that are sound, firm, and free from later regret. Marcus Aurelius once emphasized, "True intelligence is keeping a cool head in a heated situation." That may sound simple, but it's profoundly difficult. Everyone knows that anger, panic, or fear is unhelpful. Yet when stress strikes, few truly manage to control their reactions. The Stoic does not deny emotion. They simply refuse to let emotion dictate their behavior. They train daily so the mind is not shaken by what lies beyond their control, ensuring that in critical moments they respond with reason, not impulse. Calmness does not mean inaction. It means acting after consideration. You don't react instantly to an insult, rush a decision amid chaos, or speak harshly just because you're irritated. You observe, assess, and choose the best course, not the easiest one. That is real wisdom, the ability to distinguish what you want to do from what you ought to do. And when you can do that, you don't just manage the situation, you master yourself. People often confuse impulsiveness with decisiveness, but a truly decisive person doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to respond first, and doesn't need to teach someone a lesson on the spot. They understand that every action carries consequences, and the wise are those who consider those consequences before acting, not after regret. Calmness, therefore, is not just a moral virtue. It is a practical tool for navigating every arena of life, from work and family to unexpected social conflict. Calmness is the stillness that helps you see what truly matters and what is merely stealing your peace. It is the foundation for living without regret, for not reacting blindly, and for ensuring that fleeting emotion doesn't stain enduring values. When you are calm, you not only act better, you inspire others to hold on to a bit of clarity within themselves. And perhaps that is the most powerful way to spread wisdom. Not through words, but through composure in every deed. As I explored Stoic philosophy, I gradually understood that calmness is not something you naturally possess. It's something you must train for daily, like any other skill. In the past, I would react quickly to criticism or discomfort. I thought that responding immediately was how I affirmed myself, how I protected my ego. But after many exhausting arguments that led nowhere, I began to practice pausing, breathing, and observing my emotions before I acted. I realized that when I say nothing, when I choose silence or decide to walk away, I am not being weak. I am protecting my peace. Even though I don't always succeed, every time I manage to hold back feels like a small step toward maturity. To me, living with Stoicism isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear, refusing to let the outside world dictate how I live or feel. And that gives me a true sense of freedom. If you found value in what was shared in this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future content. Thank you for taking the time to listen and reflect. Stay grounded, live by your values, and let calmness guide you through every season of life. I'll see you in the next video.